What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Daily Fan Racing podcast. We are back again this week. We are talking Kansas, which is super exciting for me. It's one of my favorite tracks, so super excited for that. My name is Ryan Larkin. If you are new to the show, I am the founder, creator, whatever, Daily Fan Racing. With me, as always, is Jason, FreeNASCARDFS on Twitter. He loves to produce content for free, so he's here for free on Thursdays. But that kind of covers the intros. Let's move on. Dover, Jason, how'd you feel about it? How'd you enjoy the race? And DFS, how'd you do there as well?
Dover was good. I mean, it was another one of those weeks where, you turn a slight profit and move on. Like I didn't land on Truex, which unfortunately kind of kept me from hitting big. I did have Byron, had him out in my GPP core, but, he was also kind of paired with some bums. It looked like to my lineup. I had a lot of Harvick, had a decent amount of Logano, and that kind of went south. So, yeah, GPP, I think I made a slight profit. We'll move on. It wasn't a great week, but like I said, got some stuff right, some stuff wrong. But it was a good race. I thought it was some good fun racing through the field. Had a lot of side by side. You like to see that. And like I said, I was thoroughly entertained for 400 laps at Dover. So
yeah, for sure. So going up to or leading up to this week, I was super excited for Dover. I was pretty vocal about my dislike of Bristol Dirt and Talladega and everything we've been seeing, and that this was going to be the first real race that we would see, and I thought it really delivered. I thought it delivered from start to finish. Good action, passing. You could move through the field, which was crucial to making a good race. We saw multiple grooves. We saw a lot of different things happening, and I thought overall it was a really good race. Really good battle at the front. I mean, nobody checked out. A lot of battling. Chastain, Truex. Truex pits a lap or two early, jumps Chastain on the cycle. Just different things like that. We saw a pass for a lead with Chastain catching Byron and actually passing him under green. So that was possible. And I just felt like the event as a whole was really solid. And
comers and goers through the race, right?
Yes.
Guys who started off really fast and was rocket ships the first half, who faded. Guys who weren't really a factor in the first half of the race that rose to the front and made the right adjustments, So yeah, it was a fun race.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sorry, Gordo, I know you're probably driving through where might you be right now? Maybe through Ohio. On your way to your new home in the States. I know you're traveling. Sorry I missed the countdown this week. I look forward to have you on the show again next week. In America as an American. Not really. You probably need some sort of documentation for that. But anyways, I know Gordo's watching, so I thought I'd give him a shout out. Anyway,
Jeff Gordon's watching too. That could be possible.
Jeff Gordon. Hey, Jeff. Well, his name's actually Gordon, but he goes by Gordo. So, okay. And I call him Gordon to be like his like father figure or something. Like be a little smart ass. So, but anyways, yeah, Dover was good for me as well. Won a little bit of money and enjoyed the race. Thought it was fun. And we get to go to another track that I'm super excited about, Kansas. I think it's absolutely one of the best tracks NASCAR goes to in general. Homestead Miami gets a lot of love for being multiple grooves and tire wear and all that, and it's true. But I feel like Kansas holds a lot of those same pieces. You can run from the bottom all the way to the top. There is some tire fall off, not a huge amount, not as much as Homestead, but there is some tire fall off that actually creates comers or goers. You will have a lot of passing opportunities. You won't see anyone getting stuck behind people, which to me is what makes for great racing. And I think it's supposed to be over 90 degrees this weekend. So we should see slipping and sliding. This should be a hot one. The drivers should be struggling. We should see some cars spinning out. I know last year here we saw numerous cautions in both races, and it was difficult for the drivers. What are you looking forward to this weekend, and kind of where's your head at for building lineups?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I am totally looking forward to Kansas. Kansas has made itself on the schedule being a premier track. I mean, full of great racing. It seems like it's better and better every single year. I mean, I'm excited to see what another year of that Kansas winter on the surface is going to do to that track surface. Maybe a little bit more tire wear this year, open those grooves up a little bit more. But yeah, Kansas, fun racetrack. Should see, like you said, it's a really momentum racetrack. See the guys on the high side typically moving to the wall. It does kind of create some difficulty passing, right? Because that guy on the high side has some momentum a little bit. So that high side tends to be prevalent, can make it if your car's not handling on the inside. You see some slide jobs, though, which makes it exciting. Again, like you said, last year, we saw a lot of cautions. a lot of slipping and sliding. I didn't know it was going to be 90 degrees. So that's definitely going to see that this year. We saw a lot of cars just hitting the wall. I think Larson hit the wall 5 times in the first race here and still ended up managing to finish second. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I slide job. Dale Jr. ruined those words for me forever. Literally, I can't. It just rings in my head him saying those words. But but yeah, Kansas is a definite. If you could run the high line, you excel here. Tyler Reddick, out the gate, got his. I think it was his first ever Cup start. He got a top 10 here. Kyle Larson's obviously good here. A lot of those style drivers who can rip the top are good here. And we expect that to be the same this week. The heat thing, I was looking at the weather. I always look at the weather to see, 1, A, if it's going to rain and make life difficult. But 2, I think temperature plays a big role in these mile and a halves. And when it gets hotter, I really do focus on certain drivers and certain teams. And when I saw over 90 degrees, it really kind of piqued my interest for this race. I know you got some stats. I'm gonna throw up here.
Don't throw up. I know you said you weren't feeling good.
Yeah, right. Battling a little cold, not too bad. But I'm gonna put up your Dominator stats. I'm gonna let you go to town here. You got some Dominator and place differential stats for us for this race.
Yeah, obviously, as every week we go to, Dominator points are going to play a big key role as far as when it comes to, scoring those big points. We saw last year, we had, let's see here, Dominator. I expect you to start with the previous chart, so I'm gonna try to pick up my notes here. Sorry, Dominator points. As far as like what we saw last year, when we look at these races of mile and a half races, I pulled data from all the mile and a half races recently that have that 260 lap mark, which is kind of what we're going to see out of Kansas. And when you look at that, you see that the majority of those Dominator points, they score big as far as inside the top 10, right? 12 of the 14 performances of 10 or God Lord, man, like I'm way off here. Sorry. Okay, so Dominator, which stat? I'm not looking at my screen here. Okay, that's what I want to see here. All right, so 69% of the top 8 scorers, right, on DraftKings come from drivers started inside the top 20. You can see that's a large portion of those top scorers in DraftKings come from those guys starting the front half of the field. 40% of those came from drivers starting in that 10 to 20 range, right? Massive amount of upside in that driver starting in the 10 to 20 range. Of those 19 performances, 9 came from drivers who scored 10 or more Dominator points. So it's key when you're looking in that range, that 10 to 20 range. Like there is Dominator upside in that range. Like we think Dominators, we think guys who are going to score 30, 40, 50 points. Those are crucial, right? But what you can get at intermediates like this, you can get those guys starting that 10 to 20 range. You can score 10 to 15 Dominator points, pick up, 7 to 8 position differential points, finish inside the top 10, and they're going to score very well on DraftKings. They're going to score in that top 8, top 6 on DraftKings. So those make really great plays here. But obviously, when you talk Dominators, you want to get those big scores, right? Of those top 10, 12 of those 14 top 8 performances came from drivers scoring 10 or plus Dominator points. In total, we had 12 performances in these races of drivers scoring 20 plus Dominator points, right? Of those 20, all but one of those made it inside the top 6 of DraftKings scoring, as you can see right there. So if you get a guy who's going to score over 20 Dominator points, most likely he's going to be optimal. He's going to land in the top 6 scoring. 8 of those performances right there came from guys who started inside the top 10. So that previous pie chart, we saw that chart of the guys who started inside the top 10 who scored well. Those were guys who picked up those Dominator points, who had over 20 plus Dominator points in those races. Surprisingly, though, like we normally want to target pole sitters as potential for Dominators. Only one pole sitter has scored more than 20 Dominator points in these mile and a halves that I looked at. So it's something to kind of be aware of. You don't want to lock in the pole sitter here like you do most weeks, like we've done on these short flat tracks, in the past. Obviously, we do want to talk about some position differential, right? We do get those big position differential plays. Not a lot. You can see right here, we've had 6 guys score over 20 position differential points. Of those, though, they all made it inside the top 6 of DraftKings scorings. But if you want to look at like the real place to target for position differential, you're going to be looking for those guys, again, who can score probably 10 to 20 differential points. drivers who have accomplished that. They've done that 28 times in this 6-race sample that we're looking at, and all but 5 of those made it inside the top 10 of DraftKings scorers. 13 of those top 10 performances came from drivers starting 20th to 30th, but only 3 of those made it inside the top 6 in DraftKings scoring. Again, like those guys who are starting further back than 20th, they can score position differential points, but they're not going to score well enough to get you in that optimal lineup. So really this week, what you want to focus on is I feel like is you want to focus on trying to land on those couple dominators plays who are starting inside the top 10, and then kind of focus the rest of your plays inside that 10 to 20 range, guys who have that potential to get inside the top 10, score 10 to 15 dominator points, and then look for value in those guys starting 20th on back. Like you don't want to like spend a lot of salary chasing position differential, I feel like still.
Yeah. So I completely agree. I probably could have left the graphs up there and touch on those a little bit myself. So I've always looked at Kansas as a bit of a mechanical grip track. It's a little bit different than like a Vegas or some of the other intermediates, although Jesus, we only have like 3 of them left on the schedule. It always felt like something where a team could hit on the setup mechanically and kind of make a difference and it be an advantage once they had a setup. And I think we saw that with 23-11 last year, obviously winning both races. I always looked at Chris Buescher here at this track as a weird threat for a top 10. Back before when he was with JTG, top 10s, and then with as soon as he got over with Roush, it seemed like that carried over. It just seemed like a track maybe he had a feel for, something like that. But it just felt like teams could have and drivers could have a little bit more of a difference here, which I thought was good. But because I always looked at it as more of a mechanical grip track and that type of nature, it seemed like anyone who qualified poorly usually was not going to run well. They weren't really going to have the speed. If they qualified 30th, there's a reason for it, and their car just wasn't really good enough, and that tends to play out. If you look at the races last year, I think in the top 15 in the fall race, there was only 2 guys that started really 15th on back. There was Chase Elliott, who finished 11th, and then Denny Hamlin, who finished 2nd. Obviously, Denny Hamlin qualifying 25th and having a bad qualifying effort, we could have felt pretty comfortable going into the race that he was going to be good. So that's one of those guys on your chart where it's like, hey, he had 20 plus place differential points. He also, I don't know the exact stats. I think he had 20 plus dominator points as well in that race. I know he had a bunch of fast laps.
Pretty close. Yeah, I think you're pretty close on that one. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, and he was marching towards the end. So there are occasions when we get through with qualifying where we might look at a driver and say, okay, they're an obvious place differential play, but they're also a threat to lead some laps or win this race still. And because there's passing and everything, that's all possible. It seemed like your stats pretty much said 2 a race in terms of dominators, which is good. So you can pretty much set your lineups to that. And then you're probably looking for 1 big place differential play to round that out. And then from there, you really need to take advantage of salary and figure out how to maximize the rest of your lineup. Obviously, the 2 dominators, the most important factors, we need to hone in on those. And for me, I have a pretty good idea who I want to attack, but I'm interested who you're looking at. And so we'll go ahead and get to our drivers to watch and start with your top tier driver, Jason.
Yeah. So you talked about mechanical grip. You talked about how it's going to be very hot here. When I think of that, I'm thinking Toyotas, which obviously when we looked last year, right, we saw Toyotas were really strong here at Kansas. 5 of the top 6 positions were Toyotas in race 1. 4 of the top 5 finishers in race 2 were Toyotas. When you look at those Toyotas, to me, like obviously everybody knows the number 45 car was very fast in both those races. But if it wasn't for the number 45 car, if the number 45 car wasn't on the track, the best Toyota was going to be Christopher Bell. That's who my driver to watch is going to be this week. He started and finished inside the top 5 in both races last year. And he did that. In both races, he ranked as far as like fast laps. He was ranked 3rd in fast laps percentage, 3rd in laps led percentage in both those races. And he did that while finishing every single lap, which I know we're going to probably talk about Tyler Reddick today. He's leader of all those categories percentages, but he didn't finish every lap, right? Christopher Bell did, right? He made it to the finish, finished top 5 in both those races. And he also scored over 52 52 DraftKings points in both those races. So for me, I like Christopher Bell this week as far as a guy who I want to watch. I want to see if he qualifies towards the front this week. He's going to be a contender here again. Toyota's going to be fast. He might slide. I doubt he's going to slide on the radar. Everybody's going to see those top 5 finishes. And if you're, I don't know what the odds are. If you have sportsbook, have pole position bets, but Christopher Bell might be a guy to try to target for winning the pole this week as well. I mean, I think he's started 1st and 4th here, both races last year. So going to qualify well, going to have speed. Love Christopher Bell.
Yeah, I don't even know if DraftKings knows if they have pole position odds up. So won't be trying to figure those out. But yeah, I agree with Christopher Bell. I can't remember if he had a flat. I think he had a flat tire when caution came out in the first race as he was leading. That kind of shook his day up, or he had more dominator potential in that first race. He was looking pretty good early. Definitely agree with that. I'm on the same boat. I've always been pushing the Toyotas, having more long run speed when it's hot. When it gets slick, tires start falling off a little bit more in terms of handling and all the things. It seems like Toyotas really come to play. And so no surprise that I'm going to a Toyota, but not touch on Tyler Reddick, not touch on Bubba Wallace, the 2 drivers that are, driving for the team that won both races last year. I'm going with Denny Hamlin. To me, Hamlin is the most consistent, the safest, so to speak. He's had 4 top 5s in his last 6 starts here. Finished 2nd, 4th, and 5th the last 3 races. 2nd and 4th with this car is the most important factor. I kind of like the fact that he sucks at qualifying because that gives you place differential potential. He started 25th and 18th in both races last year, but I think that kind of goes along with my feelings of them on hot days. It's like they're going to build for more downforce. They're going to have a little bit more downforce on the car. It's going to give them a little bit better overall handling. When he gets hot, when they get 30 laps into run, he's just going to be better than everyone. He's also great on long runs, and he's one of the best drivers currently in the Cup Series. My concern, based off of last week with this play, and this is why it's a driver to watch and not necessarily an outright pick, is pit crew. His pit crew was horrific. I had to catch myself from cussing. They were horrible last week, right? So did they clean those things up? Can they just maintain track position? This race last spring or whatever, I guess it's spring, when Bubba Wallace literally lost 5, 6, 7 spots every single time he came down pit road. He would be 8th, drop back to 14th, drive back past everyone, be 7th, lose another 6 spots. He had to do that whole race. He ended the race with the most quality passes. He looked amazing, and that gave me the cue that, hey, I think he can win this race in the fall when they came back. He went out there, he not dominated, but he's probably the best car and won that race, right? I think Hamlin could be in the same situation where he's just battling his pit crew all day long, and that kind of hinders his DFS viability. But I also think he has race-winning upside, and I think attention is going to be on Reddick. It's going to be on Larson. It's going to be on Byron Bell. I think the whole top end there is kind of see a lot of ownership. So I don't think Hamlin's going to be overly loved, but to me, it's a top 5 machine basically at this track with dominator race-winning upside, and he could give us place differential upside because he doesn't qualify well.
Yeah, I like the Denny Hamlin call. I like Denny Hamlin more as a guy that can win the race as opposed to maybe the guy that can go out and dominate. If you did see last year, like he didn't score a whole lot of dominator points in those races, but he was there at the end. He rose to the top as the race progressed, as the changes were made, tires got wear, track got slicker. That's when you saw him kind of rise to the top and compete at what he finished like 2nd and 4th, like you said last year. And like I said, he was really a non-factor for most of those races until the end of those races. So yeah. I like that. I like that call.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and jump in with my mid-tier driver because it goes along with what we've been saying. It's another Toyota driver. It's another Gibbs driver. Tyler Gibbs, 7,800. So the first thing that sticks out to me is all the Toyotas are expensive as hell, except Ty Gibbs. And it's just one of those situations where I feel like we got a guy who's going to have a ton of speed in the car. And quite frankly, he's looked really good this year. He was driving well inside the top 5 there late in that race at Dover. He's shown that he can hang at this level, compete at this level with the speed. And he's done it over the stretch to start the year. 9th at Atlanta, 9th at Coda, 9th at Richmond, 10th on the dirt at Bristol. Those are 4 completely different tracks, top 10 board. Dover, he was a top 10 car. He finished 13th, but he looked really good speed-wise. He's showing that he's a guy that can consistently contend for top 10s at this level, and he's only going to get better. I feel like he's going to have an equipment / speed advantage / his car is just going to be better than 90% of the field. So I feel like this is a guy that should be contending for a top 10 at only 7,800. To me, it's the best value on the slate by a decent amount. But I am very interested in the driver that you posted as well. So go ahead and talk about him, Jason.
Yeah, the talent is there for Ty Gibbs, obviously. I mean, he's there, and he is a cheap entry point to Toyota, like you said, and that's what we ran. That's at least what I ran with last week, cheapest entry point to get those Toyotas, and he was, like you said, he was paying off until he wasn't. So, yeah, I love that call here. But I am going to lead a little different route. I'm going to talk about our first non-Toyota here, right? I am going to go with El Amigo de Watermelano, Daniel Suarez, the friend of the watermelon man, right? Trackhouse has a ton of speed on these intermediates, and Suarez is a guy who's had a lot of speed on intermediates. If you look at last year's races here at Kansas, he was running fourth at the end of stage 1 in race number 1 here before he had a tire issue that ruined his day. So he never really got to show what he could do in that race. And then he went out and followed up in the second race here in Kansas with a finished 10th. Right. He put up 20 fast laps in that race on a way to a 50-point DraftKings performance. Right. He's had speed this year. Like, finishing is the thing, right? He finished 4th at Auto Club earlier this year, has 4 top 10s in the last 7 similar intermediates, and he's tied for 3rd best in fast lap percentage, which is 8th best, and that's 3rd best, and his fast laps percentage is 8th best, and that's ahead of guys like his teammate Chastain. That's ahead of Logano. That's ahead of Christopher Bell. That's ahead of Bubba Wallace. That's ahead of even Denny Hamlin in those last 7 races as far as his fast laps percentage. So love the value you can get out of Daniel Suarez here. And I don't think anybody's going to play him because he's probably going to go out there and qualify 12th, 13th.
Yeah, I completely agree with Suarez. I really liked when I saw that there because I think it's a great guy to watch. Depending on where he qualifies, you can leverage it. Or if he qualifies poorly, I think it's a guy with huge place differential potential. Vegas, he qualified 24th, finished 10th with 7 fast laps. That would be a juicy situation. Even if he qualifies 24th, he's never super heavily owned. People just don't trust him. And, if he qualifies 15th, 16th, I think he's another top 10 threat. They've had so much speed on the mile and a half. Charlotte Coke 600, he was the fastest car in the middle of that race. Darlington in the fall, he was the fastest car in the middle of that race. Getting the finishes has always been his Achilles heel, but as far as a tournament play, he can be a glorious one come Sunday.
And those stats that I rolled off about his fast laps didn't even include Charlotte. Like that, I didn't even have Charlotte in those numbers, so it's not even including all those stuff that he accrued there. So yeah, he's been fast. Just got to finish, like you said. If he can finish, he should be there.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a quick pause on our drivers to watch. I need to do some work that I should have done like the first minute of the show. But again, no Gordo, so I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But anyways, I got a big promo going on this week, and I need to plug it at least once real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. This week, we got the F1 race at Miami, so a huge U.S.-based F1 race. We also have 17 races in the next 31 days, so huge racing month across all the series. So we're doing 50% off your first month if you sign up with the promo code Miami50 at DailyFanRacing. You'll get all of our projections, breakdowns, literally the whole lot for about $1 a race. So it's a great value right now. Want to make sure I let everyone know about that. If you have any questions or anything, just give me a shout. We can go over that and get on board, hopefully, with us over at DailyFanRacing. With that said, one more thing I should have done to start. As the banner says, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Jason and I are going to do giveaways once we get to 300. We're slowly getting there. We haven't really been pushing it last couple of weeks, but please subscribe to the channel. Get us to 300. That's our next goal. And Jason will give away a free month over at Run Pure. I'll give away 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I just want to get to 300. So I'll give away some free months to my site as well when that happens. And then like the video, tell your mom, share, let everyone know about us. Maybe your girlfriend will listen to me in the shower. I don't know. Anyways, let's get to it. Give me your value tier driver to watch for this race, Jason.
You know what? First, for you that screw it. You know what I'm going to do? If they sign up with your promo code, I'm going to give them 50% off my content as well moving forward. So
that's good because it's free. So
exactly.
Hey, free. 50%. Do you end up owing them money at that point?
I think 50% of zero is still zero. I think that's how that works.
I didn't really pay attention to algebra, so I have no clue.
All right, so value play that I'm looking at today. I'm keeping my eye on AJ Allmendinger, the Dinger. He didn't race at Kansas last year, right? But this car did, and Noah Gragson finished 18th in both races, and we saw kind of seen what Noah Gragson's done this year. Like, he's not really been the greatest driver out there. So he managed to finish 18th in both those races in Kansas last year. Dinger, though, when you look at his stats, he does have 4 races recently on these similar intermediates. And in those, he has an average finish of 16th with 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, and 3 top 20s. You know, out of a guy who's 6,100, that's pretty good value, pretty good performances. He's finished 9th and 18th in his last 2 Vegas races. I know they're not exactly correlate, but it is kind of the closest things he's been on outside of Kansas. Intermediates are kind of where colleague shines, even when you see his teammate Haley, who's priced even cheaper. He also has.
That's why it's free, by the way.
Yeah. He also has 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, and 4 top 20s in his last 7 intermediate races. So colleagues should show up strong. Very cheap prices here. They're probably going to qualify 24th, 25th, somewhere other, right in that range we want to look at for value. So yeah, AJ Allmendinger's guy who I'm gonna be interested in this week.
Yeah, Haley ended up 19th here last fall, so that kind of goes right in line with what you're talking about. Anytime I'm looking at value drivers, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like this weekend, I feel like it's a very, I shouldn't say this because someone random is going to win this race, but right now, looking ahead at this race, to me, it's like a 6-horse situation. It's Toyotas versus Hendrick. I feel like it's Byron and Larson versus the top, Gibbs guys. And because of that, I'm not really looking to try to hit on a Harvick who I don't think will really contend, or any of those guys in the 9K range. Bubba Wallace is 9K, so I should say I am looking for him. But all those other, I'm not trying to play in that range. I'm trying to play the top tier guys. I'm trying to play Denny Hamlin or Bell or Larson or Byron, the guys I think can give me the fast laps and laps led. And because I'm trying to attack that area, I have to save salary. I have to play someone cheap. And I like both those guys. I'm basically looking for anyone that can get me a top 20 finish. Last week it was LaJoie. LaJoie was situated perfectly because he started further back. We saw his practice speeds. He looked really, really good. This week, we don't know right now on Thursday what anyone's looking like, but I'm still looking for those guys that can give me a top 20 finish. And while I'm nervous about this play, I got to save the salary somewhere, and that's Harrison Burton at 5,200. So if you've watched the show, I don't think Harrison Burton's good. I think he's actually pretty bad. But a Penske car is always going to be good enough to run well, right? He has the equipment, he has the knowledge, he has the setup that should deliver him a decent performance. He's not a good qualifier, so hopefully we get some place difference potential. And I think it's a guy that can round out with a 20th place finish. And at 5,200, if he can get me 25, maybe 30 points in terms of DraftKings scoring, I can live with that. The spring race here last year started 26th, finished 21st. That's roughly what I'm looking for. Nothing special. And that salary savings is going to allow me to be able to play 3 top-tier drivers, hopefully, round it off with a Ty Gibbs and then maybe another driver in that range and build a good, strong lineup. I know I only need 2 dominators, right? And that's basically what we said about our lineups. We're looking for 2 main dominators, 1 big place differential guy, and then just filling out the rest of the lineup. And I feel like Harrison Burton's going to allow me to do a lot of the other things I want with those other 5 spots. So that's why I'm really interested in him. Another guy who I'm also interested in, kind of same range, same situation, Todd Gilliland, who I think is flat out just a better driver. And I think he's shown that this year. He's looked really, really solid. Very, very good price there. And I think both those guys qualify closer to that 28th to 30th range. So they could offer some place differential and a nice floor and a good situation to hopefully get us 25, 30 points and then let us do what we need to do with the rest of our lineups.
Yeah, I like those plays because, like you said, they do land you on. They do save you some salary, right? And to your point, yeah, you're going to need to use that salary up top this week because when you looked at when I think I looked back and it was like 28 performances on these intermediates of drivers who've scored over 15 dominator points, right? And of those, I think 9 times it was an HMS driver, 7 times was a JGR driver. Like I think it's 16, but 16 different guys have all done it, right? But you can see where the top is going to be JGR, it's going to be HMS, right? And I think we only saw 4 Fords in that lineup. So as far as Fords, and they were Penske's, I think 3 Penske's, and then Brad Keselowski had a random performance there somewhere along the lines of over 15 dominator points. So yeah, Fords, you're not going to want to land in that 9K range. You don't want to be like landing in that range, I feel like. So
yeah, Ford's just, this year specifically, they're obviously down a little bit still. It doesn't mean that they can't score top 10s. It doesn't mean they can have good results relative to normal racing. And I sometimes get lost in this too. It's like, man, Keselowski's gonna, qualify 8th and then finish 8th, and it sucks for DraftKings. But in reality, like, that's a really good day for a NASCAR Cup Series driver. Like, especially a team that's like flat out battling 2 elite teams in Hendrick and JGR. So I'm with you. I'm not super high on any of the 4 teams. I think, there's some room for the Priest and the Briscoe types to be DFS plays for us, depending on where they start and how things stack. But overall, I'm not super excited about this race from a Ford perspective. I think we kind of saw that at Vegas. They were a little hampered. There's a couple of good performances, and that's where it's hard, because you see a couple of good performances and then you see a couple of bad ones. You're like, where the hell do I land on this? Where do I go? So it'll be interesting for sure. But in terms of top tier quality, I'm definitely on the HMS and JGR guys like everyone else will.
I did just notice, though, like 8,400 still seems pretty cheap for Joey Logano, though. Like, all that said, like 8,400 seems pretty freaking cheap.
For sure. But he has looked rough this year. Like, I know he has peaks this year, but he's looked pretty mediocre at times too. And I feel like that's a product of all of the Ford camp as a whole, except for Kevin Harvick, who's just as solid and as consistent as they come. And Brad's been pretty good as well. But, Blaney was running top 5 all race, and Logano and Cindric were trash, right? And so Logano can say that there was something wrong with this car, but there's a reason why he's 8,400 right now. That's because they're not performing. When you have a long spell of just not performing, your odds drop. They don't think you're going to win anything, and your pricing drops. And that's reflective of how he's run. He scored less than 10 points in 3 of the last 4 races in terms of DraftKings scoring, which is really, really bad. And when you look at Vegas, he started on the pole and tanked, went straight backwards. Everyone loaded up on him at Vegas. So we were like, oh shit, he's gonna be fast. Horrible speed in the race, just horrible. The car wasn't good. None of the Penske cars were good. They did not have speed at Vegas. I just feel like that's a driver that, while he does have that one win, man, it's a lot of 30th place finishes and abnormal performances in a car that's not handling very well, especially on the intermediates. I'm not looking forward to playing a lot of these Ford guys this week. That's just where I'm landing. But
a hot slick track definitely doesn't play into their hands either.
Yeah, I think they're just a step behind right now. But let's roll on. Let's get to our race winners. I know who you're gonna pick. I knew who you're gonna pick because you already stole my gimmick to start the week. All right. So I did this whole thing last year. I was revving up Tyler Reddick. I've been on Tyler Reddick's, bandwagon for like 3 years, back to when he was going to go drive the 2 car. And only like 3 people get that joke. And I had this whole deal last year where it was Tyler Reddick party week. We would get balloons out, streamers, a whole lot. And then here you come on Monday trying to claim it for yourself. And I know you got all the followers and people like you a lot more, but it's still mine, Jason. And
I wasn't trying to claim it for myself. I actually didn't even really remember that stuff that I did in the past. I was basically just referring to the fact that he's in the 45 car, and the 45 car has won the last 2 races here, right? That's kind of why I will go ahead and lean right into my winner. No surprise here. I'm going to stick to my guns and say Tyler Reddick's going to win this week, right? Obviously, I mean, this 45 car, I mean, even Bubba Wallace went out there and won in this 45 car. At the end, not taking anything away from Bubba, but I mean, obviously that car is hooked up. They know how to run this track. I mean, Kurt dominated here in the first race. Bubba went out and backed it up. And Tyler Reddick, really fast at this racetrack. So even in the 8 car last year, he had the 10% of all the laps he ran, which wasn't a lot at Kansas because he did have some issues. 10% of them were fast laps. So 18% of the laps he ran, he led. So ran at the front in the 8 car. Now he's going to have the fastest car in the field in these 2 races in a Toyota in that 45 car. I really strongly believe the 45 car is going to have 3 separate winners in 3 straight races at Kansas, which would be unbelievable.
So I do have to throw this out there, and someone hopefully will stat check it for us. My understanding was that last fall, Bubba Wallace ran the same car he ran when it was a 23. It was just a number change. So
no,
the whole fleet. My point is the whole fleet was good. It wasn't just like one car. It's not just one chassis. It's not just one situation. It's the whole team, and that to me bodes well for Tyler Reddick. It's not a situation of, man, they had just one car, one set of it. I think they're just going to be elite across the board, and that bodes well for him. And then we touched on it earlier briefly. His track history here is bad, but he's very fast. You mentioned that he's not finishing these races, which is what's worrying, but we've also seen the speed and the upside. So we know the potential. We know what he can do here. Can he deliver? And I'm with you. I think he does this week as well. Because you picked him, I cannot. I had to go a different direction. And I don't think it'll surprise anyone. The same guy I talked about earlier is Denny Hamlin. I am going with the safety of a driver who does get finishes here, who does complete races, who does manage to show up at the end and contend for the win. I also believe he will flat out just be the best car. I think he'll have the most speed. You've seen it last week and pretty much a lot of this year that Hamlin's speed outright is at the top of the entire garage right now. And I just feel like he's clicking as a driver. I feel like everything's there. It's just, can the pit crew get their job done, right? The setups are right. The driver's right. I feel like everything's right there. And I think this is the week Hamlin gets it done, gets his win, locks in the playoffs. All that gets done out the way, and then he can just kind of cruise through the summer. I think he's a guy that can go on a run and win a bunch of races here over the next few months.
Yeah, I like that call. I do want to kind of mention one last guy here. I know we haven't talked about, since we're kind of still ahead of schedule, it looks like, is we haven't talked about Kyle Busch. Like, I think Kyle Busch is going to be kind of a competitor as well this week. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But I mean, he's obviously in the 8 car. We know that had speed here last year. And I mean, he's been really good here at Kansas as well. I mean, in both races last year, he had 7.89% of his laps were fast laps, which is second best. And we know that he didn't really have a strong race the second race here last year. So obviously he won at Auto Club, which is not exactly, like I said, similar, but there is some tire wear. They do kind of ride the wall a little bit there as well. So Kyle Busch is a guy who I think is interesting at 9,400, who could surprise some people this week as far as with a win. I think his odds are pretty long right now as well.
Yeah, I'm not too high on Kyle Busch personally. I could definitely be wrong on this. I think he's a driver that's good enough, like Harvick, like Keselowski. You're talking about the elite of the elite with, decades long experience. So they're always going to be top 10 guys in a race like this. They're always going to have the ability to run well. These are just too good not to, unless the car is completely out of sorts. But I don't think RCR has the same speed that they did last year. I think they're off a little bit in terms of their intermediate program. And I just feel like the gap to HMS and JGR is even bigger right now. I feel like those two teams are – and I should throw in 2311 in there as well. Whenever I say that, I should say just Toyota as a whole, because they're all using the same simulator data there with Toyota. They're all using the same notes. They're comparing off of each other. So I wouldn't be surprised to – see him run up there towards the front, get a 5th, a 6th, a 7th. I just don't think he's contending for the win for me personally. And then real quick, we do have a couple minutes. We don't ever get this show done this quickly. But Andrew chiming in here. Watermelon Man.
Boo!
Yeah.
I'm going to probably play Watermelon Man this week as well. I mean, I didn't get to talk about him, but yeah, I don't know how you don't like Ross Chastain here. I mean, we look at like intermediate races, at least the last 7 that I feel like were similar to Kansas. He's got the best driver rating at it with 108 is his driver rating at that. The second best average finish, the best top 15 laps, 3 top 3s, 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s. So I think he's definitely going to be a contender. We saw the speed he just had last week at Dover. You guys know I talked about Daniel Suarez. If I like Daniel Suarez for 8,000, I'm going to like my boy Ross Chastain this week. I do think it is kind of concerning, though, with last year's races at Kansas. Like, he obviously he ran well. I think he had the 3rd best average position in the first race and like 7th best or 6th best in the second race. So he ran up towards the front. Finished up towards the front, finishes of 7th in both those races. But I think the concerning thing is that he didn't really get a lot of fast laps in those races for whatever reason. So that is kind of a concern when you're looking for somebody who's going to dominate. But as far as can Ross Chastain show up and win this race? Absolutely. I think he can be in contention to win this race.
Yeah, and I think I noticed that a lot towards the back half of last year. He started off on fire the first half of last year. And I felt like the results kind of tailed off, not in the sense that like he wasn't really strong, but it felt like he became a 7th place car a lot more. versus a top 5 every week car. Now, granted, down the stretch, Vegas, he was really good because he was good there regardless. Homestead, he ran great. Martinsville, he had the wall ride and stuff. But I just felt like Kansas last year was a great example of him just being like a 7th place car. Maybe that's Trek specific. Maybe they're just a step behind here in battling the Toyotas and Hendrick is difficult. But anytime you have one of the best pit crews on pit road, which they do, and anytime you're one of the best restarters, which he is, you're always going to be in contention. It's just about getting the track position at the right time. So I think he's definitely in play. I think he might actually go underlooked. I think everyone pretty much should be talking up the Hendrick and Toyota. So that could end up being a good pivot play there for us. I think he qualifies around 11th. I think he finishes 7th. I think he has a good day. I don't think he hurts you, but I don't think he's optimal either. So definitely someone to watch, but I don't know. We'll see. That's the best thing about doing this on Thursday. We have all these opinions, and by the end of it, we look either stupid or smart. But let's get out of here, Jason. Where can we find your stuff this weekend? What do you got going on? Anything special or just normal stuff, normal time?
Nothing real special, but my content every weekend is special because it's free. It's for you every Sunday morning. Over at runpuresports.com is where you can find it. I put out the cheat sheet cores. I've been doing like a GPP core and a cash core each week this season. Write a huge breakdown explaining, how I think the slate is going to go, the race is going to go. Give you breakdowns on drivers. It's a lot of good information there. I feel like that you guys can start your day with, and then it's free, so it gives you an opportunity where you can still branch out and look at everybody else's stuff, and pay for the good content out there as well. So,
definitely check out Jason's stuff. It's a great way to wake up and just get your morning going, get in the flow. Because NASCAR races middle afternoon, you can read Jason's stuff, kind of get your day started, and then hopefully come look at our stuff over at DailyFanRacing. As I mentioned earlier, we got the promo Miami 50 for 50% off our whole site. That's going to cover the whole weekend. That's going to cover all races through the whole month of May. I'm really excited about the F1 race. I hate that the F1 race and the Cup race are at the exact same time. That sucks. But it is modern technology. I can dual screen it, and it shouldn't be a problem. But we got 2 fun races there Sunday afternoon. We have a fun race in the middle of Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night with the Truck Series. Kansas is always a pretty good race for a Truck Series as well. Not usually as carnage driven. It's usually a good, fun race overall, which is awesome. And, I'm really excited for that. So definitely check out our stuff. Half off, promo code Miami 50. I know Dustin's going to have his full breakdown for the Cup Series. I'll have my full breakdown for trucks and F1. We'll have everything else, rankings, projections, more podcasts. I'll be by myself this week. No co-host, but if you like listening to my voice, you got that. But that wraps it up. Hopefully I can have a good weekend. You guys can have a good weekend. Jason can have a good weekend. We could all win some money. I'm waiting on one of us to get rich and call it quits and then right off into the sunset. But until that happens, hopefully we can keep chipping away at it. Thank you, Jason, as always, for joining us. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week.